It is the most amazing day to just show up. Hi, everyone. Yvonne Heath here, nurse turned author, speaker, and change maker, and your host. Welcome to Navigating Grief with Heart and Humor, where we talk about, plan, and prepare for grief, transitions, and end of life, and everything in between, long before they arrive, and diffuse the fear so we can live fully now. Or we've been through these things and we realized how ill prepared we were. We did not have the coping skills, the strategies to just show up for ourselves first and just show up for others. And so we suffered excessively. And now what? Now we have chosen to do it differently next time. From here on in, we are going to create a soft landing, be proactive in our lives, and know that life is unpredictable. We will prepare for anything, and we accept that change is the only constant. Well, at least that's what we aspire to be. We are perfectly imperfect. We are flawed. We are human. And so we will not always get it right. And that's okay too, because part of all of this is accepting our flawed, wonderful, imperfect self, warts and all. And so I invite you in this next 30 minutes to set an intention, to just land here, to forget about all the noise and the distractions out there. And I always just take a moment to pause, to land. And I do that by taking 2 slow, deep breaths, inhaling through my nose, exhaling through my mouth. It helps me to feel grounded and to quiet the noise, to be present so that I am sharing what your heart needs to hear. And that is my intention. So I invite you to do this along with me. Just inhale nice and slow. I always close my eyes. You're welcome to keep them open or closed. When I do this, and it calms my nervous system, I just let go of all that does not serve me. And at the same time, as I share everything with heart and humor, I laugh at the self that I used to be. We're continuously transitioning and transforming our lives, and we never know what our future self will be like. Because if you would have told me, I don't know, a decade ago that I would be all try to be Zen-like and, breathing slowly and trying to ground to the earth, I would have just laughed and said, yeah, you've got the wrong person, because I'm just too busy. I have a career. I'm drinking wine to numb my pain. I don't have time for all of this. Well, maybe it was even a little earlier than that. But point being, I continuously change is the only constant, and I don't even recognize my old self would not recognize this new self, and I accept that. In 5 years, I don't know who I will choose to be, but I'm looking forward to discovering that. I would have never thought I would be this non-drinking vegetarian who embraces life, grief, and everything in between, and is a voice for social change. But I know I am doing the right thing, because this just fuels my heart. And there's nowhere that I would rather be than here with you today, having this conversation. So let's begin. In the last many episodes, I've been going through my book, Love Your Life to Death, chapter by chapter. We are at chapter 9 of 10 chapters, so we're nearing the end. And as always, I will say, oh, this was such an amazing chapter, because I have the privilege and opportunity to share so many extraordinary, tremendous stories. Regular, good old average human beings doing extraordinary things in life and at the end of life. And those extraordinary things are not just great big gestures. They're accepting what is, loving people till the end of their life, allowing people to be vulnerable, to open up, and inviting them to create joy in their life again after the loss of a loved one. So this chapter is entitled, this is chapter 9 of Love Your Life to Death, my beat up copy that has been read every year since 2016. Opportunity awaits in the dying process. And again, these are conversations that we have not really normalized in our lives. And I can promise you that by normalizing these conversations, having them with your spouse, your family, your friends, your children, awkward at first, and then they become just conversations we have about the matter of facts of life and death. And so let's begin. So I'll start with the intro. In my career and in my personal life, I've witnessed how fear begets fear and can fuel suffering when it comes to death and dying. On the other hand, spending time thinking about and talking about the inevitable can have a positive impact throughout life and in the process of dying. The best part is that no matter where you start, it is possible to develop a healthy, accepting approach to the idea of death, yours and that of others. I've created this change within myself, and I have felt relieved watching many others make this change in their lives to become more at ease and reap many other benefits. So when I'm talking about in my own life, as I always share, I haven't started caring less. I've just started accepting more. And I know this has made a difference in my life. And I have changed because in the last chapter, we talked about having the talk with grieving children. And in those conversations, we talked about children who died. And I had many conversations of people attending funerals that meant so much to the family and all the beautiful rituals they chose to do, releasing butterflies and all of these wonderful things. I can promise you that in my nursing career, I was not able to have those conversations. I would be a puddle of just anguish on the floor crying because I just couldn't even talk about children dying. I couldn't imagine having the love of my life die. And, you know, it was interesting because as I shared, the catalyst for all of this was when our son Tyler was 16 years old, went down a very dangerous road of drugs and addiction. And I realized the very grave reality that I could outlive my child. And I am beyond grateful that I have not had that experience. And that doesn't mean I won't. Even saying those words, I could not even bring myself to saying those before. But it certainly catapulted me into what do I believe about life and death? What can I choose to believe so that I can continue to live without suffering excessively in the angst of what if I outlive my children? What if? And, you know, I also married my soulmate, Jordy. You're my soulmate, by the way. Just thought I'd let you know. And there again there's the potential for a greater loss in life, right? One of us, chances are, will outlive the other. Now, I'm 13 and a half years older than Jordy, P.S. But I mean, I'm going to live till I'm 115, so we'll see. But here, that bottom layer, that foundation, that proactive foundation of acceptance, we don't have to like it. If we can accept and create coping skills and strategies and learn what grief, how to heal through grief, knowing that grief never ever goes away. There's no stages, which I've shared before. That's not what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross meant, that there are stages. She was just sharing that we can go through so much. But if we start with that foundation, and then we can see that there is opportunity in the dying process, wouldn't it be wonderful to move forward without living in fear of the inevitable? Dr. Sammy Winemaker, Dr. Ciao, geez, I hope I said that right, have a podcast called The Waiting Room Revolution, which is extraordinary, talking about palliative care and end of life and everything in between, living life to the fullest, preparing for all of life. And Sammy shared that 10% of deaths, 10% of deaths are sudden, where there's no time to prepare. We didn't expect this at this time. And so that means that 90% of people who die, 90% of deaths, there is a dying process. Think about that. So if we can embrace that, accept that, and create a life and prepare for end of life so that we can create wonderful opportunities and moments in the dying process. Wouldn't that be a wonderful way to live and to die? So I first shared a story of Sarah, who I made up. It was fictional, but it was from all of the people that I had spoken to, and I just sort of just pieced it all together, the stories that I heard so many times of people growing up in death phobic families where you didn't even say the D word, and then somebody died suddenly and everyone was ill prepared. They didn't see it coming, even if the person had a terminal diagnosis, which always that continues to amaze me. No preparation, no conversations, even with someone having a terminal diagnosis, meaning that they know that death is imminent, most likely within the next year anyway. And I've witnessed families fractured beyond repair. Have you? Everyone wanting different things, everyone having different opinions. Suddenly people who hadn't even spoken to their mom for years are coming in, and they have something to say about how they should be on a ventilator, they shouldn't be, should they be cremated, this, that. And again, in this opportunity, in the dying process, the opportunity is to have all of that stuff taken care of. So in that process, all there is left to do is love one another. So there were many people who had been through that, and then they said, you know what, I need to do this differently. I need to empower my family. And many of them started with reading my book, taking my programs, connecting with me, and many other resources out there in the world. You never have to do this alone, but you can take the first step. And so again, in these stories, I shared fictional characters, and I also shared real stories. And I'd like to share a couple with you now because, wow, I remember when they shared these stories with me, I was so distraught in so many of them. And again, now I can look back and laugh at myself, right? It's like, how did I think that I was going to be the one to be the messenger, to bring these stories to others? I could barely function after hearing some of these stories. And yet now, as I reread them, they warm my heart and I cry because I understand so much more. I understand that grief and joy can coexist. And so I grieve what people went through. I'm joyful and proud to share their stories and to change. And so one of the stories is the most incredible. Garver's gift of selflessness. Now, if this doesn't get you in the feels, I don't know what will. Story of Garver and Mary Jo. And Mary Jo is a nurse that I worked with for many, many, many years. So Mary Jo was only 18 when she married Garver, much to her parents' dismay. They wanted her to go to nursing school, which had always been her dream since she was a little girl. She had often cared for her sick mom, always wearing her nursing cap made of construction paper. Garver and Mary Jo had their ups and downs, but they loved each other deeply. In his 20s, Garver developed some quirky personality traits. No one thought anything of it. It wasn't until more than 20 years later when a brain tumor was discovered in his frontal lobe and had most likely been there for decades that changes in Garver made sense. He underwent surgery and radiation, but his demise was inevitable. He was dying, and he knew it. He was a young man with a family. He could have lived the rest of his days in self-pity, and no one would have blamed him. But that is not the road he chose. Mary Jo did not ever once hear him whine or complain about his situation. I'll just stop right there. I think I might do some whining, I'm not going to lie, and crying, and I might have a little pity party. But his focus was on his wife and his family. He told Mary Jo, listen, because I'm only going to say this once. This has been a terrific book, but it's closing soon. You're almost to the end of this book, so you'll need to open another one. He was very set on that. Mary Jo was 41 in the prime of her life, and he did not want her to live the rest of her life alone. He also insisted she start nursing school and fulfill her lifelong dream. Can you believe this? In his dying process, this is what he wanted. Oh, incredible. And so she began nursing school. She was still caring for Garver at home, but when that became impossible, she transferred him to local health center where he remained until his dying day. Mary Jo would drive an hour to and from school every day and rush to spend her evenings at Garver's bedside. He was always so excited to hear what she had learned. This is where I really get choked up. One morning, as she went to say goodbye on her way to school, Garver told her that he wouldn't be there when she returned. I'm laughing at myself. Get so choked up. She didn't understand at first. Then when she realized what he was saying, she said she was not going to school. He insisted that she attend, knowing she had a midterm that day. She reluctantly agreed. And as she was leaving, he smiled, looked into her eyes, and said, good luck and goodbye. I love you. P.S. I'll never apologize for my tears. I'm human. And that was their last goodbye. Garver died that day. She continued with her schooling, working and taking care of her mom, who died 10 months later. I asked Mary Jo what kept her going through her grief and everything else. What was her post? She smiled and replied, it was knowing how much faith Garver had in me, how much he wanted this for me. I felt I just had to do this. I just couldn't fail. Garver gave Mary Jo a priceless gift, his wish for her to go on, become a nurse, and find happiness again. And she did. Her sister-in-law, Jane, who had introduced her to Garver, introduced her to Pete. Jane wanted Mary Jo to be happy again. She's been sad too long. Mary Jo has been a nurse since 1994, and proudly wore her nursing cap for years to honor her mom, who requested this of her. She had a wonderful marriage to Garver for 24 years, and she is now happily married to Pete, a delightful man. You never know what awaits on the other side of grief. Now let's just digest that for a moment. This man, Garver, in his dying process, was able to accept, and I'm sure he had his moments, and ensure that his wife did not live in guilt. If she was 41 years old, he did not want her to live alone. He did not want to, he wanted her to be able to support herself and fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming a nurse. And he enjoyed and lived vicariously through her as she became a nurse. I mean, how incredible. Who would think of pursuing this career, feeling like, oh, I can't do this, and yet he insisted. And I will tell you, I worked with Mary Jo for many, many, many years, and she was one of the most gracious, loving, beautiful nurses I've ever had the privilege of working with. And she and Pete have a beautiful relationship, and she finished her career working in hospice. Talk about opportunity in the dying process to ensure that those who are going to grieve feel like they can move forward and create joy in their lives again. And that would fulfill your heart. Whew, easier said than done. Absolutely. Most of this stuff is. And then there's a beautiful story with my friend Erica. And I'll share a bit of this gorgeous story because it is just incredible. So Erica has been a friend since high school, and I just loved her dad, Joe Sr. He was tall, handsome, and always greeted me with kindness when I came over. And we shared the same birthday, February 16th. It was 1981, the first time I heard the word cancer. Now imagine that. First time I've heard that word. Is there anyone who hasn't been affected by cancer these days? Erica's dad started to go to Toronto for treatments because he was ill. She thought it must be serious because he was going so far away. As he continued, after months of treatment, Joe announced to his wife, "I'm taking the family to Florida." At first, she was hysterical. "Oh my goodness, we can't afford to go to Florida." But he insisted. And Erica recalls that she and her brother were so delighted. So here's my brother and me on the rides, having the best time. And there's my dad, all skin and bones, on the bench, watching us have a ball. We left Florida on February 14th. And Joe died 2 days later. Erica did not even know that her father was so close to death. She had no idea. She was 15 years old. And she spent years feeling guilty that she had no idea. And then she watched her brother in his dying process. And then their mother, she took care of many, many years, who was in a home because her care was so heavy that Erica could not have her in the home where she also had 2 boys. And she lived, my beautiful friend who visited her mom every day, she could not wrap her head around the fact that she did not know that her father was dying, that she did not have those moments with him. And she felt guilty that she did not have her mom living in her house, even though she visited her every day. So you see a very different story from Garver's. There weren't those meaningful conversations. And yet I said to Erica, your dad took his family to Florida just before he died. He sat there, all skin and bones, and watched his children have the time of their lives. Isn't that what any parent would wish for? To watch their children have the best time of their lives? Joe wasn't able to or didn't want to have meaningful conversations. He did not want to share. He did not want to have people around him grieving as he became more and more ill. He wanted to take his family to Florida and watch his children have the time of their lives. And Erica did the very best she could in supporting her mom, went to see her every single day. And yet she lived with all this tremendous guilt until we had these conversations and reframed it. Bogue, which is her nickname, I call. I said, look at what the gift you gave to your dad at the end of his life. And look how you supported your mom and spent all that time and painted her nails in her dying process. Isn't that extraordinary? In the dying process, you had those moments with your dad. Even though you didn't know he was dying, you gave him a gift and you had an amazing time. And so when we look back at those times where we feel regret and guilt, and if you do feel those things, acknowledge and allow your feelings, And if you feel like I didn't do the best I could, perhaps you can write, what would you do differently? And also, chances are you did the very best you could with the skills you had and with the knowledge you had. I invite you to look back and say, what are the things that I did right? What are the things that we can focus on? What are the good memories? And things that you wish you had done differently, do it differently the next time. Because opportunity in the dying process starts with becoming proactive, creating that soft landing, that foundation, that those coping skills and strategies, knowing how to grieve, what do you believe about life and death, and acceptance that we don't all die of old age and we don't always get a warning. And if we can see that there is opportunity in the dying process, have those conversations, have the conversations you want to have. So many times in the dying process, we focus on making someone eat, making them more comfortable, getting them outside. Come on, Dad, come on, Mom, come on, Mary, you can do this. And perhaps something we can do is create more time to avoid a crisis of spirit. That crisis of spirit of not having those conversations, looking back and thinking, oh, regret, remorse, guilt, all of those things. Perhaps we can just take the time to sit with the dying person, our loved one. Again, maybe it's uncomfortable, yes, and we can do it. Perhaps we can ask these questions. What do we need or want to say to each other? Who do you need to say goodbye to? Who needs your forgiveness? Who needs to forgive you? Is there someone you would like to thank? Let's record or write down messages for your loved ones. Let's talk about your regrets so you can release them. Imagine if we took the time to look at these issues and address them instead of pretending them away. What if we had these brave conversations? For example, Mom, I'm sorry I disappointed you and I didn't go to school. Son, can you forgive me? I wish I would have said I love you more. These can be critical, life-changing and death-changing opportunities in your dying process. Remember from the movie Frozen, let it go. Let go of everything but love. And so we're going to continue this conversation. Opportunity awaits in the dying process, because I know that it is a challenging thing to wrap your head around. Opportunity in the dying process. We don't even like to talk about grief, death, dying, all of this. And it's a yes and. Yes, and I know that has been the norm for many of us. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself if you haven't had these conversations. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to say, it's the whole, when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the next best time now? The best time to talk about, plan, and prepare for grief, death, and dying is when we are young and healthy. And the next best time is now. So let's have these conversations. Let's allow grief, joy, and everything in between. And until then, until our next conversation, I invite you to go to my website, loveyourlifetodeath.com. We can stay connected. You don't have to do this alone. Follow our weekly blog. Get the book. I'm telling you, I reread these stories, and it's an audiobook, an ebook, and this book I've carried around. Beautiful stories, life-changing, death-changing stories. And you can always take my program, Get Ready for Grief, because we can do this differently and we can do this together. And also my resources page, I have many other beautiful resources from around the world. So Thank you again for wanting to be the change. And as I always say, my call to action, if you want to do this differently, if you want to be able to see opportunity in the dying process, plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode, and we'll keep having this great conversation. Bye for now.